Hey everybody, thanks again for downloading our content. I am Jake Wiskerson, your host, and I'm going to take a sabbatical for a few weeks, so you're going to hear the same exact introduction over the next few podcasts, but I promise they're all good. They're actually a reboot of something that we did back in December of 2018 and January of 2019, where we did a 6-part series on emotional functioning. So I take the 10 core emotions as studied by Carol Izard. That's 2 R's and 2 L's in Carol, I-Z-A-R-D, Izard, if you want to look him up. And it's from the book that he wrote called The Psychology of Emotions. And I take these 10 emotions, 2 per episode, and try to compare and contrast them and go a little bit deeper into what their function is in our brain. So I hope you enjoy it. This is going to be a 5-part or 6-part series, I should say. But alongside this, I invite you to pay attention to the Zephyr Wellness accounts on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, because we're going to be posting videos about the individual emotions as they go through. And so you're going to get a video overview if you want, if you follow that. And they'll also be housed on YouTube, as well as this podcast. So feel free to share this stuff around. I think it's great. I think emotional functioning is something that should be taught in all schools. Personally, if I had my magic wand, I would wave it over all of kindergarten through 12th education and teach it throughout, but specifically in the freshman high school health curriculum that is universally required. We have to study lots of things about health in our 9th grade year. And emotional functioning, I think, should be one of them, and I think it should be this model. Personally, I study this stuff quite a bit, and I've yet to find such a comprehensive, overarching review of literature as what Izard did in the late 80s, early 90s. So this is why I present it. It makes a lot of sense. It's very straightforward. It's empirically based. It's well researched and studied. And if you want to check out his book, The Psychology of Emotions, it's quite expensive because it's out of print now, but it is very, very good. And if not, just listen to me, because I've done what I think is a decent enough job in distilling it down into some digestible pieces for you. And then you can go apply that in your own life. So enjoy the series, and if you hear my voice repeated over the next few episodes with some repeat content from about 3 years ago, 2.5 years ago, don't be surprised. I am just taking a break because I need one. In the meantime, if you need to check in on your emotional functioning, your mental health, go take a free and anonymous mental health exam, not an exam. What do we call these things? Survey, not a survey. Screening. That's the word I'm looking for there. Losing my mind these days. Talking about mental health, and I lose my own mind. Take a free and anonymous mental health screening at WTTA.org/love. That's walkthetalkamerica.org. And you can click the thing all around the website. That organization is something I do in my free time. Really almost more of a full-time gig now, where we're trying to bring mental health treatment and care and personal well-being to the firearms community. And that would be people who use firearms in their daily lives for work, or hobbyists or collectors, whatnot, because historically firearms owners have been suspicious of getting their mental health tended to for a whole bunch of reasons, some of them legitimate, some of them perceived. And the flip side of that coin is to also make our mental health community of clinicians savvy and competent in understanding what firearms culture is like. So there's lots of resources on the site. We continue to build our organization, and I'm very proud of the work that we're doing. But one of the major things we do is offer these free and anonymous mental health screening tools that are hosted by Mental Health America. And you can check out mentalhealthamerica.net for more on them if you'd like. But in the meantime, get a screening. Get yourself taken care of. There are 2 in Spanish, the anxiety and the depression one, but I think there's 13 or 14 screenings overall. So check it out and share with a friend. Also, if you haven't, check out Audible. Audible kicks us a few bucks every time somebody signs up for a free 30-day trial at their website. And if you use audibletrial.com/noggin notes, that's how we get our little kickback, which is great because it helps to offset some of the costs. Turns out it's really expensive to host a podcast for 3.5 years. And now Noggin Notes has 3 podcasts under the same brand. So there's this Noggin Notes, and then there's Noggin Notes Africa and Noggin Notes Cambodia, all with exceptional content. I'm very, very proud to be affiliated with that too. Sofiso, our founder, has done an amazing job hustling and working really hard to get great content creators, and the hosts have done a great job getting guests. So share this stuff around, and let's make the world a better place. I'll see you guys all in a few weeks. Hey, welcome back to Noggin Notes, the only podcast that I know of recorded in Lovelock, Nevada, as is the case with this one today, that aims to enrich and educate your noggin on matters of mental wellness and spirituality and psychology and emotional functioning and social interaction and all sorts of things. We try to cover as much as possible here to enrich wellness as broad as we can do that. I'm Jake Wiskerson, your host. We appreciate you listening. It's always humbling, and I want to give two specific shout-outs. One to Zephyr Wellness, which is the company that I co-own, and my family of Zephyr wellness sites. That sounds like a disease. Wellness sites. I don't know if I want to be diagnosed with that. But my team at Zephyr Wellness is amazing, and I love them for allowing me to be able to continue doing this podcast for free. So that's why Zephyr Wellness is a sponsor. You can check out zephyrwellness.org and find out more about us. And if you're a willing sponsor out in the audience and you want to supplant my generous donation of my time, or just give us your money because this stuff isn't free, we would welcome that, and I'll happily do a live read for your product over the air and help you sell more of what it is that you're trying to sell, because as long as it aligns with our mission and philosophy of helping others and doing it in an innovative and philanthropic way, I have no problem sharing that. I think it's just the way the world goes around. And the second shout out is to Dash Radio, which recently picked us up and is integrating us into the real life radio channel on Dash Radio. If you haven't just explored Dash Radio, check out dashradio.com. It's digital radio 24 hours a day, free of subscriber fees, and it's amazing. There's like 90-something channels on there, and I love it. I love being a part of it. I'm flattered and I'm honored that my voice gets to be on those airwaves. And on behalf of my partner with Noggin Notes, Safiso, we're just incredibly humbled to be invited. So thanks to Blaze and his team for having us on. And I hope this reaches lots of ears and helps enhance lots of lives, because ultimately that's what this is about, is making lives better so that we all live in a little bit better peace and tranquility. So thanks for tuning in. This podcast is about sadness and anger. It's the first in a 5-part series. There'll be 2 motions per part, and for a total of 10, and we'll go over those a little bit at a time. If you're old to the podcast, we've already done this before, about a year and a half ago, and we're doing it again because we didn't touch everybody, and sometimes it's just tough to scroll back into the archives and listen to it. So settle in and enjoy this podcast on sadness and anger. Enjoy. Raise your hand if you enjoy being sad. Raise your hand if you enjoy being angry. Actually, don't raise your hand if you're driving. Don't take your hands off the wheel of the car. That's super dangerous, because I just asked 2 questions there that could result in people removing both hands from the wheel. Hopefully, nobody raised their hand and saying that they enjoy being sad or angry. But this is not about enjoying your emotional experiences. This is about understanding them. So in this podcast, we're going to talk about sadness and anger, and I want to explain not only the neurological adaptive function that they all have, or that these 2 both have. Eventually, I'll get to the rest of the 8 remaining emotions, but for today, we're going to tackle 2, and if I can untie my tongue, that would be even better. So we're gonna talk about sadness and anger. Now, you may have heard it said that anger is a quote unquote secondary emotion, and I'm putting my hands in air quotes, but you can't see that because this is radio. But picture air quotes in my hands, and anger is a quote unquote secondary emotion to some people. Now, neurologically, I don't know that that's true. I think that most of the research indicates that we feel things, as we feel them, and we don't necessarily pick the order in which they arrive. However, there is some anecdotal evidence, as shared by most human beings who experience these things, and then report later that they do feel an order to them. And I'm picking sadness and anger for this particular podcast because I think they're interrelated. And I'll also mention fear and contempt at some point down the road. And those will have their own separate podcast. But today we're going to discuss why sadness and anger are so important. Now, among the 10 emotions that I listed in the original emotional overview podcast, you may have heard and evaluated those and said to yourself, it sounds like 7 of those are negative and 3 are positive. And a lot of people say that to me when I teach this stuff, either in session or in a group setting, or if I'm giving a seminar. And that's not true. They're neither they're neither positive nor negative. They're just simply informative. So if we evaluate our emotion as something that's trying to tell us what's going on with the world, we don't necessarily have to be as attached to it and then judge it in such a manner as being good or bad. So when I did the whole, raise your hands and, keep them on the steering wheel thing, I wanted to illustrate that most of us have a predisposed judgment associated with what we feel. And my job here in this particular show is to move you off of that judgment and into a position of neutrality where you can just simply receive the feedback that your brain is giving you. So if we take sadness and anger, it's not about whether you want to feel them, you like to feel them, you enjoy it, you purposely seek it out. It's about what is it trying to tell you. So what Carol Izzard said in his research that spanned 50 years is that emotions are simply adaptive in their nature. And adaptive means that we're trying to interact with the environment that's throwing various stimuli at us. So the environment is constantly doing stuff. It's triggering stuff in our brain that says, hey, brain, respond to this. Sadness's function is to tell us that our expectations were not met. And I'm giving a very overly simplified introduction to this. So if you happen to be a neurologist or you happen to study emotions for a living, please forgive me. I'm doing this for the layperson. So don't rake me over the coals and shoot me a flaming email that says, Jake, you're a marriage and family therapist, stay in your lane, stop talking about neuroscience. This is just to give people an overview to how they tick, because frankly, this stuff just doesn't get introduced in any sort of curriculum in any educational setting anywhere broadly. So the adaptive function of sadness is to tell us that our expectations were not met. Now, along the way, we want to keep in mind that these emotions are on a continuum from very small to very large. Now, I mentioned in the overview that they're a wave. There's a beginning, a middle, and an end to every emotional experience, and that it's temporary. Eventually, all emotional experience ends because supposedly the stimulus that caused it is over, and then what's left is the chemical residue in our brains that eventually flushes through our body and stops pumping, right? So just 3 to 9 seconds is about all that lasts in our brain. And after that, if we stay in an emotion longer than that, what we're doing is we're thinking about the thing that caused the emotion. Thus, we have control over our emotions to some degree. So sadness says that our expectations were not met. Now, what's an expectation? Well, it could be anything. Sometimes we have conscious expectations, and sometimes we have unconscious expectations. And I would submit that most of our expectations we're simply not aware of. Let me illustrate. If I walk into a fast food restaurant and I want a hamburger and some Dr. Pepper, and I order my hamburger and I go over to the soda machine with my cup and I click the Dr. Pepper lever, and out comes soda water because there's no syrup to go with the soda water, I will be disappointed because internally I had an expectation that I was going to get Dr. Pepper out of that device, and it failed me. So what I've experienced there is what we would call on the low end of the sadness continuum, something along the lines of disappointment. And that's fine, and that's tolerable usually. I had an expectation to get a certain soda. It was not met. I went, and I felt sadness on a very low end. Now, on a very high end, we might have an unconscious expectation that a family member is going to live longer than they do and they die prematurely. And I understand this is very macabre, and I'm going through it very quickly, almost callously, but bear with me. if you have had a family member die or recently, apologize. I'm not purposely triggering you. This is just to illustrate a point. So unconsciously, we don't consider that people don't last forever, right? So unconsciously, we just kind of have this impression that mom's going to live forever because we've been with her forever, quite literally our whole lives, or grandma has just always been around, or dad, or whoever.